The massive bioengineered warship of the Zornak pierced through Earth's outer atmosphere like a vengeful spear of obsidian and emerald, its hull pulsing with biomechanical energy that had subjugated countless civilizations. The ship's organic surface rippled with anticipation, centuries of uncontested galactic dominance, etched into every molecular fiber of its living structure. Inside the command deck, General Krastar stood with six-limbed superiority, his scaled skin a mosaic of battle scars that told stories of worlds conquered and civilizations crushed. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing Earth's defensive capabilities, which, to the Zornak, looked laughably primitive. Antiquated satellites, rudimentary space defense platforms, primitive communication networks that seemed more suited to a pre-spaceflight civilization. Scan complete, chirped the ship's neural interface, its tone devoid of emotion. Planetary defenses categorized as minimal threat. Recommended course, immediate subjugation protocol. Krastar's razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the artificial light. Another world, another conquest. The Galactic Confederation had long since accepted the Zornak as its unquestioned military authority, and this blue-green planet would be no different from the hundreds they had claimed before. Meanwhile, in the Earth Defense Command Center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Elena Rodriguez watched the incoming vessel with a calm that would have unnerved the Zornak had they been able to see her. Around her, a diverse team of specialists moved with a synchronicity that defied traditional military protocol. Quantum analysts sat next to psychological warfare experts. Cybernetic engineers worked alongside cultural interpretation specialists. "They're broadcasting again," said Lieutenant Marcus Chen, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that looked deceptively simple. Standard subjugation transmission. Demanding planetary surrender. Elena's lips curved into the slightest hint of a smile. Standard response protocol. Marcus. The response was nothing like what the Zornak expected. Instead of fear, panic, or desperate negotiation, they received a data packet so complex, so multi-layered, that their primary communication systems began to fragment and reconstruct themselves multiple times per second. Hidden within seemingly innocuous communication streams were adaptive algorithms, designed to do far more than simply communicate. They were probing, learning, understanding the very communication infrastructure of the alien vessel. Each transmission was a quantum-encrypted puzzle, a message that was simultaneously a weapon, a communication, and a sophisticated intelligence-gathering tool. "They're trying to analyze our response," Marcus reported, his augmented eyes tracking data streams that move faster than any biological system could process. "Adaptive encryption is holding. They won't crack even the first layer." The Zornak ship's neural interface began to experience what could only be described as confusion. Protocols designed over millennia of conquest suddenly found themselves confronting a communication method that didn't exist in any of their strategic databases. General Krastar's clawed hand tightened on the command interface. Something was wrong. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to proceed. Planets were supposed to cower. Civilizations were meant to recognize immediate superiority. But humans were doing something else entirely. "Full scan," Krastar demanded, his translator rendering the complex reptilian language into sharp, precise standard galactic. "I want to know everything about this planet. Every single detail." Little did he know, that was precisely what the humans wanted. The spark of conflict had been struck, and the universe was about to witness something unprecedented. The first engagement began not with a thunderous battle, but with a calculated whisper of technological precision that would forever change the galaxy's understanding of warfare. Deep within a classified facility near the Atacama Desert, Sergeant Aria Nakamura adjusted the neural interface of her combat suit. It wasn't just armor. It was a living, breathing extension of human adaptive technology. Each fiber was a quantum-entangled sensor, capable of processing and responding to threats faster than any biological nervous system could comprehend. "Target acquisition protocols engage," her suit's AI murmured, the voice neither fully human nor completely synthetic. Zornak Advanced Squadron detected. 37 vessels. Projected conventional survival rate, 12.3%. A normal military would have retreated. Area's team saw an opportunity. The Zornak strike force approached with the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. Their bioengineered warships moved in a perfect geometric formation, each vessel connected through a sophisticated hive mind communication network that had conquered entire star systems. Massive energy cannons hummed with destructive potential, capable of reducing entire planetary populations to ash in moments. What they didn't realize was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. The first indication that something was wrong came when the Zornak's quantum communication network began to experience inexplicable interference. Data packets fragmented. Tactical displays flickered. Command structures became momentarily disconnected. A microsecond of vulnerability that, in traditional warfare, meant nothing. For humans, it was an eternity. Area's squad of 6 operatives seemed almost laughably small against the incoming alien armada. Traditional military doctrine would have called their deployment suicidal, but there was nothing traditional about humanity's approach to warfare. Initiating adaptive response, Area commanded. The neural link combat suits began to transform. Nano-adaptive materials shifted molecular structures, creating defense mechanisms that didn't just protect, they anticipated. Where a Zornak energy weapon would fire, the suits would already be reconfiguring, turning potential points of impact into points of counterattack. The first alien vessel to fire found its energy beam refracted in impossible ways. Instead of destroying its target, the weapon's energy was redirected, transformed into a cascading signal that began to infiltrate the Zornak's own communication networks. "What is happening?" screamed a Zornak commander, his translation matrix struggling to process the unprecedented tactical situation. One human squad was doing what entire alien civilizations had failed to do for millennia, completely dismantling the Zornak's seemingly invincible combat methodology. Each of Area's team members was more than a soldier. They were living weapons, each with specialized capabilities that complemented the others in ways that defied traditional military understanding. A cybernetic analyst could redirect enemy communications. A quantum physicist could manipulate energy signatures. A psychological warfare expert could predict enemy movements before the enemy itself knew its own intentions. The battle lasted less than 17 minutes. When the electromagnetic dust settled, 37 advanced Zornak vessels had been systematically neutralized. Not destroyed, neutralized. Their systems were intact, their crews alive, but completely paralyzed. It wasn't just a defeat. It was a comprehensive demonstration of technological and strategic superiority that sent shockwaves through the Galactic Confederation's military intelligence networks. The galaxy had just discovered that humanity played by an entirely different set of rules. And this was only the beginning. The Galactic Psychological Warfare Division of the Confederation was a marvel of collective intelligence, or so they believed until humanity entered the equation. Composed of 9 different species, each with millennia of experience in manipulation and strategic communication, they had never encountered an opponent quite like humans. Dr. Konstantin Volkov leaned back in his ergonomic chair, his augmented eyes scanning multiple holographic displays simultaneously. Around him, a team of specialists from Earth's Cognitive Warfare Research Center worked with an intensity that bordered on artistic creation. They weren't just analyzing alien communication, they were deconstructing entire cultural paradigms. "Target analysis complete," announced Sophia Chen, a linguistic specialist whose neural implants allowed her to process multiple communication layers simultaneously. The Zornak hierarchy is built on a complex system of ritualized dominance. Their entire social structure is essentially a perpetual psychological competition. Konstantin's fingers danced across a haptic interface, pulling up intricate network diagrams that looked more like living organisms than traditional communication charts. "Perfect," he muttered. "Vulnerability identified. What the Galactic Confederation failed to understand was that humans viewed psychological warfare as an art form, not just a military strategy. Where other species saw communication as a linear process, humans understood it as a multidimensional ecosystem of information, emotion, and manipulation. The first wave of their psychological offensive began subtly. Encrypted data packets began circulating through alien communication networks, not as attacks, but as carefully constructed narratives that would slowly erode the Zornak's internal cohesion. These weren't simple propaganda messages. They were sophisticated mimetic weapons designed to exploit the deepest psychological fault lines of an entire species. Each transmission was a precisely crafted piece of cultural dynamite, targeted to create maximum internal disruption with minimal external intervention. In the Zornak command centers, paranoia began to spread like a virus. Communication intercepts suggested internal rebellions in sectors that had been stable for centuries. Historical records began to be questioned. Long-standing alliances started to fracture. The Zornak's rigid hierarchical structure, which had been their greatest strength, was now becoming their most significant vulnerability. "We're seeing unprecedented communication patterns," reported Lieutenant Marcus Chen, tracking the psychological impact in real time. "Their internal communication is becoming increasingly fragmented. They're spending more energy monitoring their own communication channels than responding to external threats." It was psychological warfare taken to its most sophisticated extreme. Humans weren't just fighting a military conflict, they were conducting a complete deconstruction of an entire civilization's psychological infrastructure. The most brilliant aspect of their strategy was its subtlety. Nothing could be directly traced back to human sources. Each narrative, each information packet was designed to look like it originated from within the Zornak's own communication networks. It was gaslighting on a galactic scale. Aboard the Zornak flagship, General Kraz-Tar found himself increasingly isolated. His own subordinates began to question orders. Communication channels that had been crystal clear now felt like navigating through a dense fog of uncertainty. "Something is wrong," he would mutter, his translator rendering the words with a growing sense of desperation. Something is fundamentally wrong. But by the time he realized the true nature of the attack, it would be far too late. The humans had transformed psychological warfare from a military technique into a form of cultural quantum mechanics, capable of changing the very fabric of societal reality through the most delicate of interventions. And they were just getting started. The quantum research facility beneath the Swiss Alps was humanity's most closely guarded secret. Here, the boundaries between technology, biology, and pure imagination blurred into something entirely unprecedented. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, not to be confused with the earlier military captain, but equally formidable, stood before a holographic display that pulsed with more computational power than entire alien civilizations could comprehend. Her team represented the pinnacle of human innovation. Neural engineers, quantum physicists, cybernetic specialists, and computational theorists who saw the universe as an intricate puzzle waiting to be solved. "Adaptive Network Online," announced Dr. Marcus Chen, his neural implants interfacing directly with a quantum computer that seemed to breathe with its own form of intelligence. Zornak technological signatures are being mapped in real time. The computer wasn't just analyzing alien technology. It was learning, adapting, and preparing to transform every technological assumption the Galactic Confederation had ever held. Humanity's technological approach was fundamentally different from any other species. Where alien civilizations saw technology as a tool, humans viewed it as a living, evolving organism. Each system was designed not just to perform a function, but to learn, adapt, and transcend its original purpose. The first demonstration came with the deployment of the Chimera drone swarm, a network of autonomous devices that defied every known principle of robotic warfare. Each drone was simultaneously an individual unit and part of a collective intelligence that could reconfigure itself faster than the speed of thought. When the Zornak launched their first major offensive, they expected to overwhelm human defenses with sheer technological superiority. Their battlecruisers were living monuments to centuries of technological advancement, bioengineered vessels that could heal themselves, weapons that could predict and neutralize incoming threats. They had no concept of what was coming. The Chimera swarm didn't just defend. It transformed the entire battlefield into a living, breathing computational network. Each drone was a quantum-entangled sensor capable of processing and sharing information at speeds that made the Zornak's most advanced communication systems look like primitive smoke signals. Tactical reconfiguration in progress, the swarm's collective intelligence announced, its voice a harmony of synthesized tones that suggested something far beyond traditional artificial intelligence. Zornak energy weapons found themselves redirected before they could be fully charged. Defensive shields were systematically dismantled by microscopic drones that could phase through molecular structures. It wasn't just defense, it was a complete deconstruction of the concept of technological warfare. Dr. Rodriguez watched the battle unfold with a sense of clinical fascination. This was more than a military engagement. It was a comprehensive demonstration of humanity's fundamental approach to technology and innovation. "They're trying to understand our system," Marcus observed, his neural interfaces tracking millions of data points simultaneously. "But they can't. We're operating on an entirely different computational paradigm." The Zornak battlecruiser, a vessel that had conquered entire star systems, found itself systematically neutralized. Not destroyed. Neutralized. Its systems were intact, but completely reprogrammed. Its own technological infrastructure turned against itself with surgical precision. What made human technology truly revolutionary was its fluidity. Where alien civilizations saw technology as a fixed state, humans understood it as a continuous process of evolution and adaptation. Each system was designed to learn, to grow, to transform itself in ways that were impossible to predict. By the time the electromagnetic dust settled, the Zornak had learned a fundamental truth about humanity. Technology was not just a tool. It was an extension of human imagination. And imagination, they were discovering, was humanity's most dangerous weapon. The Zornak Ancestral Archives occupied an entire moon, a massive repository of cultural memory that had preserved the species' collective consciousness for millennia. Its walls were living data crystals, each holding the accumulated knowledge of generations. For the first time in their recorded history, those crystals began to whisper doubts. Dr. Lydia Chen, head of the Earth Cenocultural Manipulation Division, studied the holographic displays with the precision of a surgeon and the creativity of an artist. Around her, a team of specialists from disciplines that didn't even exist a decade ago worked with an intensity that bordered on revelation. "Cultural fault lines identified," announced Dr. Ravi Patel, a mimetic warfare specialist whose neural implants allowed him to process cultural information at speeds that would have driven a normal mind to madness. The Zornak's entire societal structure is built on a delicate balance of ritualized dominance and collective memory. What humanity understood, and what no other species in the galaxy had ever comprehended, was that culture was not just a collection of traditions. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of information, belief, and collective psychology. The infiltration began with something seemingly innocuous: historical records. Carefully crafted data packets began to circulate through the Zornak communication networks. Each packet was a masterpiece of cultural engineering. Documents that looked like they originated from the deepest archives of Zornak history, but which subtly recontextualized their most fundamental beliefs. A battle from 1,000 years ago, reframed to highlight moments of doubt, of weakness, of internal conflict that the official histories had carefully sanitized. A legendary warrior's conquest, reimagined to show the psychological cost, the personal trauma hidden behind the heroic narrative. "We're not destroying their culture," Lydia explained to her team. "We're giving them the opportunity to see themselves more completely." The Zornak's rigid hierarchical structure began to show hairline fractures. Junior warriors started questioning the absolute authority of their leaders. Long-standing cultural assumptions became subject to unprecedented scrutiny. Communications intercepted from various Zornak sectors revealed a growing sense of existential uncertainty. Their most sacred historical narratives were being re-examined, not through external criticism, but through what appeared to be their own archival materials. General Krastar found himself increasingly isolated. The warriors who had once looked to him with unquestioning loyalty now asked uncomfortable questions. Why had certain battles been fought? What were the true motivations behind their centuries of conquest? It was psychological warfare elevated to an art form, a complete deconstruction of a civilization's self-understanding without firing a single weapon. The most brilliant aspect of the infiltration was its subtlety. Nothing could be directly traced back to human sources. Each narrative, each historical recontextualization looked like it had emerged from within the Zornak's own cultural systems. "They're doing to us what we've done to countless civilizations," muttered a senior Zornak archival keeper, his translator rendering the words with a mix of horror and reluctant admiration. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were conducting a comprehensive cultural audit of an entire species, challenging every fundamental assumption about power, history, and collective identity. The Galactic Confederation had never encountered an opponent who understood the true nature of cultural warfare. Information was no longer just a weapon. It was a living, transformative force, and humanity was just beginning to demonstrate its true potential. General Krastar stood alone in the command chamber of his flagship, a being once considered the most feared warrior in the galaxy now reduced to a shadow of his former self. The holographic displays around him flickered with a chaos that defied everything he had ever known about military engagement. His personal communication network had become a labyrinth of misinformation, doubt, and internal conflict. Warriors who had once followed his every command without question now challenged his decisions, their voices laden with an unprecedented uncertainty that cut deeper than any physical wound. Tactical analysis, he demanded of the ship's neural interface, his voice a low growl that betrayed his mounting desperation. The response was anything but reassuring. Multiple strategic inconsistencies detected. Previous combat models, 99.8% effective. Current operational capacity, 12.3% reliability. The transformation had been so subtle, so complete, that Krastar could not pinpoint the exact moment everything had begun to fall apart. Humanity had not just attacked his military. They had dismantled his entire understanding of warfare, of power, of civilization itself. Deep within the Earth's most classified research facility, the team responsible for this comprehensive deconstruction worked with a calm that would have terrified the Zornak had they understood its true nature. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, a fifth-generation strategic warfare specialist, moved between holographic displays that tracked the psychological disintegration of an entire species. Targeted information cascade at 87% effectiveness, announced Sophia Chen, her neural implants processing multiple communication streams simultaneously. They're no longer a unified military force. They're a collection of increasingly paranoid individual units. What made human strategic thinking so devastating was its holistic approach. Where other civilizations saw warfare as a linear conflict between opposing forces, humans understood it as a complex ecosystem of psychological, technological, and cultural interactions. The breaking point wasn't a single moment of defeat. It was a comprehensive collapse of everything the Zornak believed about themselves. Their communication networks, once a testament to their technological superiority, had become a weapon turned inward. Each transmission carried layers of psychological manipulation, so sophisticated that even the most advanced alien decryption systems couldn't distinguish between genuine communication and carefully crafted misinformation. Krastar remembered the early days of his military career, centuries of uncontested conquests. Entire civilizations that would surrender at the mere sight of a Zornak battle formation. Now, those memories felt like distant echoes from another reality. Incoming transmission. The ship's interface announced. Source: internal communication networks. But it wasn't a transmission. It was a final, devastating psychological attack. The message was a meticulously reconstructed historical narrative that systematically dismantled every heroic myth, every sacred belief that had sustained the Zornak's sense of cultural superiority. It wasn't just information. It was a surgical deconstruction of their collective identity. In research facilities across Earth, teams of specialists watched the unfolding scenario with a mixture of professional fascination and almost artistic appreciation. This wasn't just warfare. It was a comprehensive cultural intervention. "We're not destroying them," Dr. Rodriguez explained to an observing committee. "We're giving them the opportunity to understand themselves more completely." The Zornak had conquered countless civilizations by understanding their weaknesses. Humanity was now demonstrating that the most profound weakness was a lack of ability to question one's own fundamental assumptions. As the holographic displays continued to fragment, one thing became abundantly clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had just redefined the very concept of conflict. The final confrontation was nothing like any military engagement in galactic history. It wasn't a battle of weapons, but a collision of fundamental philosophies that would reshape the understanding of conflict itself. On the barren surface of a neutral moon, selected as the meeting ground by mutual agreement, General Krastar faced Captain Elena Rodriguez. The contrast was stark. A massive reptilian warrior who had once been the most feared military commander in the galaxy, now standing opposite a human whose power emanated from something far more complex than physical strength. "You have destroyed everything," Krastar began, his translation matrix rendering his words with a mix of rage and grudging respect. "Our entire civilization. Our history." Elena Rodriguez stood calm, her posture betraying no hint of triumph. Around her, a small team of specialists represented humanity's most sophisticated strategic capabilities. Each member was more than a soldier. They were living embodiments of human adaptability. "We didn't destroy anything," she responded. "We offered you an opportunity to understand yourselves." The battlefield was a holographic representation of the Zornak's entire military and cultural history. But this was no simple projection. It was a living, breathing analysis that continuously reinterpreted historical events, showing the complex motivations, the hidden traumas, the unexamined assumptions that had driven their civilization for millennia. Dr. Lydia Chen, the team's cultural specialist, stepped forward. Her neural implants processed information at speeds that made traditional computation look primitive. "Your civilization's greatest weakness," she explained, "was your inability to question your own narrative." The holographic display began to shift, revealing layers of the Zornak's history that had been carefully hidden. Moments of doubt, instances of compassion buried beneath layers of conquest. The psychological complexity was overwhelming. Krastar watched as his entire understanding of his species' history was systematically recontextualized. Each battle, each conquest was shown not as a moment of triumph, but as a complex interaction of psychological, cultural, and individual motivations. "This is not defeat," Elena explained. "This is evolution." The human team had done something unprecedented. They hadn't come to destroy the Zornak. They had come to offer them a path to understanding themselves more completely. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, the strategic warfare specialist, explained the fundamental difference. Other civilizations see conflict as a zero-sum game. We see it as an opportunity for mutual transformation. The Galactic Confederation's observation ships watched in collective disbelief. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. There were no massive energy weapons, no devastating planetary bombardments. Instead, there was a comprehensive deconstruction of an entire civilization's understanding of itself. Krastar found himself experiencing something he had never known: genuine vulnerability. The rigid hierarchical structure that had defined Zornak society for millennia was crumbling, not through external force, but through a profound internal realization. "We offer you a choice," Elena said, her words carefully measured. "Continue as you have, or evolve." The holographic display continued to pulse with information, not as a weapon, but as an invitation. Each data point was a bridge, an opportunity for understanding that went far beyond traditional concepts of diplomacy or conflict. In that moment, on that barren moon, humanity demonstrated something far more powerful than military might. They showed the galaxy a new way of resolving conflict, not through destruction, but through comprehensive understanding. The universe was about to change, and humanity was leading the way. The Galactic Reconstruction Summit convened on a massive space station that orbited the nexus of 3 major star systems. It was a gathering unlike any in recorded history. Species that had been bitter enemies for millennia now sat together, their fundamental understanding of civilization transformed by humanity's unprecedented intervention. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the massive circular chamber, her presence more commanding than any military uniform or ceremonial regalia. Around her, representatives from over 60 different species watched with a mixture of apprehension, respect, and genuine curiosity. "We are not here to conquer," she began, her words translated simultaneously into hundreds of linguistic and communication matrices. "We are here to redefine what civilization means." The holographic displays that surrounded the chamber began to pulse with a living visualization of galactic interactions, no longer a rigid hierarchy of power, but a complex, interconnected ecosystem of cultural exchange and mutual understanding. Dr. Marcus Chen, standing beside her, activated a comprehensive data projection that laid bare the intricate psychological and technological innovations that had reshaped galactic dynamics. It wasn't just a presentation. It was a deconstruction of every previous understanding of interstellar relations. The Zornak delegation, led by a transformed General Krastar, sat in a position that would have been unthinkable months earlier. Where once they represented unquestioned military might, they now embodied a species in the process of fundamental self-reflection. "Our approach is not about elimination," Elena continued, "but about evolution. Each species carries unique capabilities, unique perspectives. Our goal is to create a framework that allows for genuine mutual understanding." The most radical aspect of humanity's intervention was its fundamental rejection of traditional power structures. Where previous galactic civilizations had operated on models of conquest and hierarchical dominance, humans proposed a network-based approach to interspecies relations. Dr. Lydia Chen stepped forward, her neural interfaces processing millions of cultural data points simultaneously. "We've developed a comprehensive cultural exchange protocol that goes beyond traditional diplomatic mechanisms. It's not about compromise. It's about genuine transformation." The proposed system was nothing short of revolutionary, a real-time cultural and technological exchange network that would allow species to understand each other at levels previously unimaginable, not through force, but through comprehensive voluntary sharing of perspectives. Representatives from various species began to realize the true nature of humanity's intervention. This wasn't a conquest. It was an invitation to a new way of existing. The Quantum Diplomatic Network, as it was being called, would allow for unprecedented levels of cultural and technological exchange. Species could share not just technological innovations, but deep cultural insights, psychological frameworks, and evolutionary strategies. "We're not creating an empire," Marcus explained to a bewildered Arcturian diplomat. "We're creating an ecosystem of mutual understanding." The most surprising element was humanity's complete lack of desire for traditional power. They weren't seeking territory, resources, or political control. They were offering a fundamental reimagining of how civilizations could interact. General Krastar, now transformed from a warrior to a diplomat, spoke for the first time. "We misunderstood power," he said, his translator rendering the words with a depth of emotional complexity that would have been impossible months earlier. "Power is not about conquest. It's about understanding." As the summit progressed, it became clear that humanity had done something unprecedented. They had not just changed the rules of engagement. They had completely rewritten the fundamental understanding of civilization itself. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity had led the way, not through force, but through an unprecedented capacity for empathy, innovation, and comprehensive understanding.